All right, well, it's July 10th. We haven't met since June 26th, but we also don't have an agenda at the moment for the Ambient meeting. So if you have a topic you would like to discuss this morning, please add it to the agenda and we can jump in. I'll go ahead and create a section for everyone to use. Maybe.
The easiest thing I've found is just copy one of the existing dates up there and change it because it gets a little weird. I haven't figured out how to insert a proper tagged date.
Yeah, what's interesting is I appear to have just deleted the date rather than copying it. You would think 4 years of Google would have gotten me able to do this efficiently, but you would be incorrect. Ah, see the Googler with the expert advice there in the chat. Thanks, Justin. So I wanted to check in mostly because I don't know the status of multi-cluster for Ambient. I think I've heard anecdotally that there's some testing that needs to be done in order for us to advertise support for that. I was wondering if anybody knew if there's like a burn down list for what needs to be done there, or a doc. Are there design issues where we know multi-cluster to be incompatible with something about Ambient and we need work done there?
And if it's local or not local, or cluster local.
Yep.
I mean, it's just pod, multi-cluster pod, or if we support cluster set.
Naranjan?
I forgot where I saw this, but I think there was a discussion somewhere specifically about multi-network support with Ambient, like how to use like waypoints or east-west gateways with Ambient for multi-network topologies. I think John had a doc on that. I can try to dig and see if I could find it later, but I know that that's like an active area that needs work and is like currently unsupported. And I think on one of the blogs that Lynn wrote, she said like flat network setup are implemented but not tested, so they're currently in alpha.
Flat network implemented, the question is how. I mean, if it's with cluster local is global semantics or not, that really is a fundamental issue. Remember, we had a discussion probably many months ago, and pretty much everyone agreed in theory or reluctantly that you cannot have Ambient enabled by default if cluster local is broken, because many applications do not work if you start sending traffic globally when the implementation expected to be local. And that's a problem for normal Istio, and for Ambient, the idea was to fix this and use cluster set local. But I have not seen the implementation. I mean, I maybe I didn't look at the right place or didn't reduce IPRs.
I believe we're still lacking integration tests around that scenario. The flat network stuff that we do support. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we don't have them, and that would be a prerequisite, at least I think, for calling that any form of stable.
My question is the implement, and if the implementation is seen, does it support this new semantics, or it's still the old semantics?
That I don't know.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing this doc. It doesn't appear to have a status, so it's not clear if this has been reviewed or approved by anyone. Um,
I
sounds
think
like
this
we'll
is
need,
just current state as of. I think it's still up to date, even though it's old. I think it's the one that Ranjan was referring to. I don't see another.
okay.
Yeah, that's the one.
Well, it discusses a number of options, and I don't think it says which option is preferred or implemented. So it sounds like we'll need some clarification from John on where this is at. I don't think he's with us this week. Okay, well, that's probably as far as we can get along those lines then, without some additional input. Any other topics for this week? Like strangely quiet.
I saw some, well, this might also require other input, but I saw a couple of PRs around that zero downtime Z-tunnel upgrades. Did those get through, or do we have a sense if that proved out the hypothesis from a couple of weeks ago that that we could potentially do in-place Z-tunnel upgrades with like 4 nines downtime?
Yeah, so I believe those are all in. I'll go back and double check, but yeah, that as far as we have tested does work if you're just doing an in-place upgrade. Note that it is not zero touch, and that if you're it will eventually disrupt the connection, right? It'll do it very quickly. If you have a long-lived connection that outlasts the amount of time we wait for the client to stop using things, then we're just going to drop it because there's not much you can do. Which I think it's a configurable value that's like some amount of minutes or something. But we'll basically wait for that, and then at the end of that deadline, just terminate any existing connections and restart. That should be very quick. If your app doesn't make long-lived connections, it probably won't even notice. And if it does, then we'll drop it, and it should be okay if it is the kind of app that is all right with an interrupted connection. And if not, then you have to do something else. But yeah, that works as well as it is going to work, I believe.
Yeah, I looked at it. It's good enough. It's probably, anything better would be too complicated. And I think it's between this and the normal practice to do node upgrade with draining when you do the infrastructure upgrade. I think we are covered.
Yeah, that's option B if you don't like this.
Well, no, that's option A, I would say, because that's the
Well,
safest and
sure,
operators.
yeah, the other option if you don't like this. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Was there particular like changes that needed to be made to Z-tunnel or the charts to get those tests to pass, or was it just a matter of providing tests to document that it works?
I think it's primarily for tests to document that it works. We had some weird stuff around draining in Z-tunnel that wasn't very smart that I think John fixed that made this a little cleaner. But the basic functionality is the socket reuse stuff, which has been there since the NPod PR merged, I believe.
Okay.
So pretty much minimal downtime, with the exception being long-lived connections that are greater than, what order of magnitude we talking? Hours, a day? Do we have an idea of what that number is?
I think that's a user configurable value that defaults to 5 minutes right now. I'd have to go check. But it's a Z-tunnel environment variable. So you can basically say, at a certain point, it's maybe diminishing returns, but you can configure how long Z-tunnel will wait for your app to naturally terminate. It's not foolproof, right? Because you really can't, at scale, you can't organize or orchestrate that kind of thing, but it's like best effort.
I think we all agreed, there is no disagreement that 5 it's a very, very low value, and we should have at least an hour as a default value.
I don't know what the current default value is. I don't know if that change made it in. I'd have to go look.
We can, if it didn't, it's relatively easy to change it.
Yeah, it's easy to do, chart. Yeah.
And I think 1 hour is a minimum that I would be comfortable in. I would even go 2 hours. I mean, there is no rush to upgrade faster than, to do train faster than 2 hours. I mean, so the impact is relatively minimal. By the way, on this topic, there is one tiny detail that I don't think was mentioned. And if you are running Kubernetes with oversubscribed or fully loaded node, so basically each node has allocated to the capacity, there is a case that I've seen happen where you will not be able to schedule the new Z tunnel. If with a high priority, it may kick out some other process, so it may have some small negative impact if you go this with this approach. Probably should document it, but it's not. Yeah.
Ben, is the odd interaction that you're commenting on there with regard to revisions and long waits on the Z tunnel, is that because the user may delete the control plane before that Z tunnel is done draining?
No, I think it's more that just like it means basically that since your Z tunnel has to be in place upgraded to actually start respecting the new data plane, that your data plane labels, your revision labels would not actually take effect until that drain was finished for the old Z tunnel, so that it could start pointing at the new one, which is a little surprising maybe if you're not intimate with the details of how that stuff works, but that's something far afield we don't have to worry about, but it is maybe worth like keeping in the back of your mind.
So workload revisions don't impact Z tunnel selection, right?
That's correct, but if you install a new revision, we effectively have to implicitly upgrade Z tunnel to point at the new revision, right? So you would be sitting there. So if you had long-lived connections, the old one would be sitting there until the apps let go or the timeout was hit, whatever. And then, so it makes the UX for that a little weird if you set it for long values, if you understand what I'm saying. It's not
Okay, I think I see
wrong
what
necessarily, but it's a little weird, yeah.
Not so much about revision as it is about the version of the Z tunnel that you're hitting.
Yeah. It's a side effect of the revision stuff, really, but in practice, that's how it would look.
Okay, thanks. Any other topics
guess-
for today? Oh, Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I guess we're on the upgrade topic. Can someone do me a favor, remind me where we landed on waypoint upgrades? I know Mitch at one point you had a doc out for that.
Can you remind me what the question is? We landed on waypoints can be upgraded.
Okay, so maybe the question earlier a while ago was around tags specifically. I think maybe that was the open question, and the resolution was that tags in general are sort of a mess. So waypoint tag upgrades are also sort of a mess. But those are, yeah, I guess just a regular like eventual consistency type of thing where eventually, like when you upgrade your waypoints, ISOD is going to learn about the new ones as the endpoints appear, and then program the Z tunnel with WDS as they get the new waypoint endpoints. So okay, I don't think that's going to be as big of an issue. Well, you do still have the long connections to a waypoint potentially. Is there some? It sounds like I'm thinking there's less of a guarantee of downtime when you're upgrading your waypoint. Like you do, you should expect some like more disruption with the waypoint.
No, because waypoints are layer 7. It's easier for them to apply back pressure onto the client to reconnect, and that can happen from the waypoint. So with one waypoint, one TCP connection can begin directing, as I understand it, the request to a new envoy, to a new waypoint, and that should just work seamlessly. Does that sound about right? Kaufman, I see you cocking your head. What did I get wrong?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Waypoint upgrade, it's you have more time basically. It's a bit more flexible because you have you can stop, start, and have larger intervals.
Intervals like when there's no waypoint available, you're saying?
No. There is never an interval, but you can have, version 1 and version 2 running, in different deployments. And long live connection are the same. And if you do a reset, your connection is gone.
Yeah.
But you can tolerate larger. You can do 1 day if you want, and you can keep the.
You raise an interesting question there. So you're right that you can run multiple versions of a single waypoint concurrently, like is theoretically possible. It's not supported right now. Like Ambient won't do that for you.
It is kind of supported. I mean, EastTOD is going to do it for you. You upgrade EastTOD. Since you are using gateway APIs, that's normal stuff. That's how ingress gateways get upgraded.
But
It's a new
there's-
controller.
Sure, but it's a very transient state, right? Like that's just being the deployment controller will spin up a new one, tear down an old one, spin up a new one, tear down an old one. But the duration of that deployment is on the order of less than 30 seconds or so. It's not a stable state.
That's a bug. It's a missing feature, and it's not specific to Waypoint. It's specific to Gateway. The whole implementation of the Gateway API. Yes, we have this problem. We should probably fix it. Yes.
So what I'm interested in, so if you're orchestrating your own, if you're not having SDOD do orchestration, you can certainly run 2 concurrent deployments as a stable state, 2 different versions of Envoys connected. But as I understand it, the waypoint will still just round robin TCP those waypoints. So there's no intelligent load balancing there. Should we be building an API to do weighted load balancing at the waypoint weighted load balancing at the Z tunnel between those waypoints?
Yeah, you are right. We had this discussion for persistent session and the whole lame duck draining stuff. So there is, if you do it manually, I think there is the other step where you need to fail health check, or there is something about it. And I think it's supported to some extent. We added it when we implemented persistent sessions, because that's also for sidecars, by the way. They need the same thing to declare their lane dark, meaning that they reject new connections, but they keep processing existing connection or sessions. And I think the endpoints in Kubernetes are going to be marked as in a particular way. They added support to endpoint slice to mark an endpoint that is in this state. But it's someone probably needs to to spend some time writing a doc, because I'm pretty sure we have the elements necessary, and Kubernetes has added whatever was necessary. But I don't think I ever seen a proper. But I think when Kubernetes, when you start shutting down and reducing the pool of the old version, is doing most of this automatically for you, because it's going to do the removal from the endpoint slice, and then the CNI or whatever is going to stop sending new requests, and there is a wait interval that we also have.
Yeah, so I think the high level summary of the problem is that Z tunnels are not revisioned, but they send to waypoints that are revisioned, and STODs themselves are revisioned. So when you talk about rolling out a new version of a waypoint today, that effectively is in place. It's the same as restarting your Istio ingress gateway. OSS Istio, just there's only one proxy, one data plane. There's one proxy per gateway resource, Kubernetes gateway resource.
Well, that depends on the deployment scale. They can have an HPA or have scaled out that deployment.
So there's one revision of a waypoint deployed per gateway, essentially.
If you are using the current deployment controller that is STOD is creating actual deployments.
Correct.
But I don't think that's true, because if you have basically you upgrade to a new version, it wins the election, and when it wins the election, it's creating a new deployment, and you will have side by sides 2 deployments for the gateway. And I don't think it's deleting first. It's first creating, because
there's no election for the deployment.
There's no election. It's an in-place change to the deployment.
Oh, in place. Yeah, then you are right. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, so this is, I've talked here in the past about doing canary upgrades with gateway API gateways and Istio, And that isn't as big of an issue for Kubernetes gateways. You just treat it as a proxy. With waypoints, it gets a little trickier because in a regular like sidecar Istio world, everything is revisioned. It's all the kind of the same dimension. The matrix have to all have the same dimensions. It all matches, right? But now you're essentially needing to transpose down to a single dimension for ambient. So you to figure out what the Z tunnel is going to send to. Right now, it's sort of fine. We don't run into the problem as much in OSS because there's only a single waypoint effectively. The new revision is going to take over when you relabel and you restart. If we did want to allow for longer draining, sort of along the lines of the way the Z tunnel has a minimal downtime sort of upgrade path, then we need to rethink how we deploy waypoints today.
Can someone familiar with the code confirm when a Z tunnel connects to a waypoint, is it using EDS equivalent or is it using the Kubernetes networking and respecting the, letting Kubernetes do the routing? I thought it's a later.
I believe
It
it's the
talks to the
latter.
Kubernetes service, I believe.
Whereas in this case, it's absolutely equivalent between Istio gateways without ambient. So waypoints are no different than regular gateways from this perspective. I mean, if you have a no regular gateway or ingress in Istio's classic, it will have the same characteristics, same behavior. I mean, the new Istio ID will do an in-place upgrade and to be exactly the same draining, same characteristics that. So nothing different between ambient and waypoint and regular gateway, and both need
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Exactly. You're exactly right. I think the use case I'm trying to tug at is for the non-waypoint case, we have this sort of minimal downtime where you can configure the termination grace period of the Z tunnel. But if you happen to be running ambient with a waypoint, then you don't have that same control because one way or another, you're going to have to upgrade the waypoint. Once you do that, the old Z tunnel's connections are going to be broken. So the app's connection to the Z tunnel is going to be fine, but any long-lived connections through the waypoint are going to be gone in the span of 30 to 45 seconds, even if you want a longer time period. So it's kind of like it's sort of like the big O of your downtime is going to be the maximum, or sorry, the amount of disruption is going to be you have to take the most disruptive workload, the most disruptive part of your upgrade, and that is what your disruption expectation is. And in this case, because the waypoint is sort of a singleton, you have your only one waypoint revision can exist at a time. Your actual downtime on your upgrade is going to be as disruptive minimally than the than the Z tunnel, if that makes sense. No, it is not possible with the template because even if you set a termination I see what you're saying. So yeah, if you set the drain duration, on the waypoint, that could work. Yeah, and force it to stay around as it's draining the connections, and then make that match whatever's on the Z tunnel. That should work.
And we should make sure it's also an hour. I mean, if we set the Z tunnel, we should have the same setting for both of them.
Agreed. Good call out.
By the way, this is not pretty. I mean, normally we should have some setting in Helm installed or whatever with train period and apply it to both template. And so we don't want necessarily people to go edit the templates.
I would agree with that. Like you should only have to think about that one value, and not to set it in two places. We should just take whatever I don't know what you call it, the drain period, and make it work for both Kubernetes and for both waypoints and Z tunnels. The default's 30 seconds. We should increase that. Sorry, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, that's the current one. But yeah, we'll change it. Yeah, but it's a little tricky, I think, in the case of to synchronize those values now because obviously waypoints are not managed by Helm, so it gets to be a little tricky. But then we have to, I guess, either create or maybe we can reuse an existing STOD value or whatever, or so the controller can properly set that for the waypoints that it spawns. But that would probably be another config value, which is the only downside of that. But we can do it, and I think we have to. Yeah.
As long as we use the same name in both charts, it's okay. I mean, we use
Yeah,
image,
yeah.
template, cannot use different names.
So then we mentioned a little bit that whole cost and that idea of running multiple concurrent versions of a waypoint and progressively shifting traffic between them. I'm wondering if that's necessary, and how do we get user feedback on whether that's necessary? So if the gateway upgrades are good enough as they are with one deployment, a 30-second coexistence between the two versions, give or take, and then they shift over, and that's stable enough, or whether we need to introduce additional stability. Do we just kind of wait for users to complain?
Look, it's basically just like the upgrade of Ambient, where you have the option that is 90% okay, which is just in place upgrade, and most people will be okay. A production environment normally will be okay. And then you have paranoia mode, Google running production systems and this kind of stuff where it's not okay. So advanced users do have, the ability to manage the gateways manually. They don't have to use the deployment controller. They can use managed load balancers that are completely outside of the cluster and do whatever. I mean, and they have their own mechanism. There is plenty of stuff to do. An SRE can do to if they want to have 100%. I mean, depends how many nines you want. Basically, that's the bottom line. Probably we have 1 or 2 nines easily with what we have right now.
Yeah.
And for more, you pay in complexity, and that's life.
That makes
I
sense.
think I would agree. I think the current approach with the termination drain is more than sufficient for open source. If you get to more complex scenarios, people can write their own deployment controller, orchestrate their own gateways outside the cluster. Like, it's a sliding scale of complexity and value for some value of, or for depending on the size of your organization and the needs of your organization, and people can make the decision for themselves. If our hypothesis is wrong and customers come to us in droves, or users come to us in droves looking for more, or if there's some scenario we don't think about, we can reevaluate. But I feel pretty good about this bet, given the technology.
I think another way to look at it, if you want something to be reliable, to have many nines, you probably need SRE, and you need to have someone who's, kind of specialized management of the gateways. And that's usually better done with the managed gateways, and when you have a fleet of gateways that are, you kind of know what you're doing, you have on call, you have all the other stuff that is necessary for nines. What we have for in-cluster self-managed, you create a gateway object and some pod pops up, is good enough, but you cannot have each individual namespace owner have an SRE that is managing that waypoints and does all the other stuff. So it will never be as good as a fully managed, kind of dedicated team, dedicated on-call, dedicated resources, waypoint gateway, etc.
That makes sense. I All right. Well, it feels like we've kind of closed on that topic. Any other topics before we wrap up for the day? Okay. Well, if you weren't here at the last hour, please make sure to submit your Istio Day talks. They are due by this Sunday night, and the conference is in November in Salt Lake City. We always come down to the sort of the wire on Istio Day talks. We'll have approximately 0 until like 3 days before, and then everybody gets theirs in. So yeah, make sure to get yours in, and we'll look forward to seeing you there.